The Tampa Bay Lightning celebrated Jon Cooper's 12-year anniversary with the team in style, dominating the Penguins in a 6-1 victory on home ice. And this game may have done plenty to prove that the Lightnings are a team not to be reckoned with in the postseason, and that the Lightning might have the best coach and player in the NHL.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Josh Sperber, welcoming you into another episode of Locked On Lightning and giving you all one big thank you for making Locked On Lightning your first listen every day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And if your team is the Tampa Bay Lightning, then this is the show for you. And the first thing that I think everyone was celebrating in today's Lightning game before the puck even dropped, Anthony Cirelli was celebrated at the first commercial break with a 500th game graphic. And the Lightning as a team celebrated Cirelli from practice to game time in his 500th career game. And Anthony Cirelli spoke on what that meant to him after the victory.
Big dream of just being able to play in one. So, like I said, just especially be able to play in 500 and then thank so many people along the way, especially my teammates and all the guys that I was able to learn from the first game all the way until now.
And Cirelli, obviously, a big thank you to his Lightning teammates, one of a small handful of NHL players who have reached the 500-game milestone mark with just one team. And Cirelli celebrated in the best possible way, getting the first goal of the game to open up the scoring, and then again make it 3-0 as part of a Lightning 3-goal onslaught in 2.5 minutes. So 2 goals in career game number 500 for Cirelli, extending his career high in points and goals so far this season. And Cirelli has shown that he has been one of, if not the best two-way players in the NHL this season. And I know I've said time and time again on this podcast that I think he is the best two-way player in the NHL this season. And in my opinion, he is the choice for the Frank J. Selke Award just to signify that. But I think it was more than just Anthony Cirelli tonight. It was the defense playing great. It was the Lightning not getting discouraged and really showing, just perfect composure after Tristan Jarry made some spectacular save. The first 3 or 4 shots really on both goalies were difficult saves to make. Obviously, Vasilevsky facing fewer shots and performing better than Jarry, getting another win. And just once that first goal came in, it just seemed like the dam broke for the Penguins. And from there, you could just kind of tell that this was going to be the Lightning's game to lose. And then in the second half of that first period, something just kind of clicked for the Lightning, and they were just on fire for the rest of the game. And even that goal that the Penguins scored in the third period, a difficult tap in that Vasilevsky might not have even saw. And right after the 6-minute mark is when the Penguins scored their first and only goal of the game. Another one that's just not an easy save to make. And frankly, not much you can blame on really anyone on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Just sometimes those tap-ins, those redirects are hard to see. And the Lightning certainly had their share of those. Certainly some deflections led to especially the early goals for Tampa Bay, including just a quick little flick from Braden Point. Was quintessential Braden Point, which you really didn't see how the goal was scored until the replay. Point rebounded off of a shot that came out pretty far. Point was actually behind a Penguins defender, and the defender made the mistake of not having his eye on the puck whatsoever. He was marking Point, couldn't really see the puck. He had his back to the goaltender, so couldn't see the puck coming right back at him. And Braden Point, before he even got a chance to turn and look, just kind of stuck his stick underneath that Penguins defender and just tapped it into an open net, leaving Jarry diving for the puck. And Tristan Jarry ended up being pulled after that Braden Point goal with 4 minutes left in the first period. And the Penguins' backup goalie allowed 2 goals in the second. And that was it. But I think I would have called this the most complete game in the Lightning season so far had that final goal for the Penguins not been scored. Because offensively, defensively, it just seemed like the Lightning were on their stuff all night, and the Lightning were just firing on all cylinders. And, even down to the puck luck, just everything was going their way. And in those kind of games, you see the best of a team. They had a 6-0 lead going into the third period, their largest margin of victory heading into the final frame in a game this season. And there were a couple of people in the press box with me that mentioned how the Tampa Bay Lightning just kind of flip a switch when they play on home ice. And whether it's just the extra help of some of the best fans in all of hockey, or even just, the system that the Lightning play. I mean, it's hard to not, shout out the fans for that. A 10-plus year sellout streak for Tampa Bay. It's, you rarely see an empty seat in the house after about 6:30 for a 7:00 game, so 30 minutes before game time. But it's just amazing, the atmosphere at Amalie Arena, and you can easily see why the Lightning play so well there. But I think today it was just, this is a Lightning team that did everything in the system of Jon Cooper that they needed to do. And Nikita Kucherov, after his 3-point game, made him the third player in the NHL this season to reach 100 points, and he moved into a tie for second place with Leon Draisaitl in points on the season. Ahead of tonight's game, he came in just at 98 points. He was 7 behind Nathan MacKinnon, and now he is certainly a lot closer. But Nikita Kucherov mentioned that just the system that the Lightning have, this was one of the games where it was just too tough to beat.
When we play our system, we consistent throughout the game. They're a good team. It's tough to beat. So we'll do that.
Nikita Kucherov is a guy who leads by example. He's been one of the best players in the NHL since he got to the NHL, and that's something we'll talk about a lot more later on in the show. But, I mean, the guy knows hockey. He is legitimately one of the best and smartest hockey players that I have ever seen play. And, as the maestro of that system, the guy who's usually running point, the guy who is usually, the primary puck handler, the guy who has a hand in most goals that the Lightning score throughout the season. If he's saying the system is working, it's definitely working. And I think anyone who was at Amalie Arena, anyone who watched that game on television would tell you the same thing. Offensively, it might not be the most goals the Lightning have scored in a game, but it might be the best run offense that I've seen from the Lightning. I mean, there was never a point in the game where I'm like, oh, man, they made too many passes again. They're turning it over too much in the center of the ice, or they're not controlling the puck well enough in their own zone. They dominated possession. They dominated in every single facet of this game. And even on the power, the one power play chance that the Penguins had, I think they had one shot on that entire power play. Just a truly dominant game from the Tampa Bay Lightning. And frankly, exactly what they needed, because before we go to the next segment, we'll go to the standings. The Panthers were off, but the Maple Leafs, with a dominant victory, now have a tie for first place. Exactly the same record as Florida, 43, 25-3 through 71 games. The Lightning are -2 on points to both of those teams. All three teams have now played 71 games with 2 fewer wins and 2 more overtime losses for the Tampa Bay Lightning. They also continue to have the best home record in their division and one of the best in the entire NHL, 25-8-2. The Tampa Bay Lightning certainly tough to beat, as Nikita Kucherov said, when their system is on point. And at Amalie Arena, they're one of the toughest teams to beat, and it's why they're looking like a serious contender in the upcoming Stanley Cup playoffs. But you can't get to the Stanley Cup playoffs without a great coach, and that's something that Jon Cooper has done in almost every single season he has played with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Yesterday was the exact day in 2013 that Jon Cooper was hired, his 12th season as a Bolt. Looks like he is going to make the playoffs once again. And we're going to talk about his legacy in the next segment as not only one of the greatest coaches in the game today, but maybe one of the best all time. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs put your post at the very top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. I've been in that spot where you need the right hire like yesterday. The pressure's on, and every day with half the right person is a setback. That's exactly when Indeed's sponsored jobs come in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. And right now, you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed here on Locked On Lightning. Terms and conditions apply, but if you're hiring, Indeed is all you need. Greatness is measured in a lot of different ways, differing for players and coaches. And a lot of times, even some of the great coaches of the game can go underappreciated. While that might not be the case for Lightning's Jon Cooper, he is certainly appreciated and loved by his players and fans of the Tampa Bay Lightning and Team Canada and probably any other team that Jon Cooper has been on, because it's clear to tell that he is not just one of the great coaches in hockey today, but he is one of the great people in hockey today. And since he joined the Tampa Bay Lightning in a very difficult situation, by the way, the Tampa Bay Lightning have the second most wins in regulation in the NHL, 567 wins, 304 losses, 80 overtime losses under Jon Cooper. And he is in his 12th season with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Assuming that the Lightning continue on the track that they're currently on by the end of April, Jon Cooper will have played in the postseason in 11 of his 12 seasons in the NHL. He is the second in terms of coaches who have played 900 games or more in the NHL. He had the second most wins of any coach in their first 900 games, doing it all with one franchise, which especially in today's sporting landscape is not easy to do. Most teams in various sports go through coaches as quick as anything, but certainly no need when you have a guy like Jon Cooper coming to the ice. And I mentioned before that he came into the Lightning on relatively difficult circumstances, and I don't think that's talked about enough. He had a 28-game win streak going with the AHL affiliate, then the Norfolk Admirals, where Cooper was coaching in the 2012 and 2013 season. In March, the 25th of March, 2013, he was hired as the interim head coach for the final 17 games of the regular season and was quickly promoted following the Lightning's playoff exit. The 2016-2017 season is the only time in the Lightning's history with Jon Cooper that they failed to qualify for the postseason. And it looks like that streak of playoff games is going to continue. And you look at that season, the Lightning were not far out from the playoffs that year. They were only a few points out of the final spot. They finished 5th in the Atlantic Division and 4th in the wild card standings. Not too far behind the Islanders, the Maple Leafs, the Rangers, the wild card teams that ended up finishing ahead of Tampa Bay in that spot. So even then, obviously missing the postseason is missing the postseason. It's a zero-sum game, all or nothing. But even then, 94 points in missing the postseason by 1 point. The Maple Leafs were the second wild card team and finished 1 point ahead of the Tampa Bay Lightning that year. So even then, Jon Cooper could have been on a playoff team and maybe the Western Conference that year. Maybe if they had played in the Metropolitan Division, it would have been possible as well. I mean, you just don't know. But the point is, even when Cooper missed the playoffs, he still did it as one of the better teams to miss the playoffs. And that was in the beginning of Nikita Kucherov's career. Kucherov had, at that point, set a career high with 85 points in a season, career highs with 40 goals and 45 assists in his third season in the NHL under Jon Cooper. He was just getting to that top line. And, there were some older players on the Lightning team. I mean, you can make excuses for the Lightning not missing the playoffs that year, fine. But what you can't make excuses for is that Jon Cooper has continually proved to be among the best currently and all time in the NHL in terms of coaching. And it's one of the reasons that I feel like the Lightning have such a high player retention rate when it comes to most other teams in the NHL, because Coop is just a coach that you want to play for. He's a guy that will adapt to his players. He's a guy that the players all love and respect. I mean, nothing but good things said about him after the morning skate by all of his players, most of whom who've been with him for, 5-6+ years, or even some like Victor Hedman for the entirety, and who has been with the Lightning longer than Jon Cooper has. I mean, you're not going to hear a player say a bad thing about Jon Cooper. And it's because he always shows up for his players, but he also adapts to the needs of his players and the talent on his team. And Brandon Hagel was talking about kind of the way the Lightning run their offense and transition from offense to defense. And just the way he was talking, you could tell that there was some coaching influence in the words that he was saying, but I'll let you guys be the judge of Brandon Hagel talking about how the Lightning can transition their offense into their defense and vice versa.
Your offense comes from shooting the puck and retrieving the puck and getting pucks to the net. And that's just kind of what we do. It's a little bit of execution too, obviously, but just a shot from the point, Tip hits Tony's, and he scored right in the lead. There's a number of goals scored there tonight. That's a good thing. You score a lot of goals there. You don't score a lot of goals on the other side. So I think, like you said, your best defense is offense, and that's when you're retrieving pucks, staying with puck, and that's when you're going to turn pucks over and good things are going to happen.
And Brandon Hagel is a smart hockey player, a great hockey player, and a guy who knows the game really well. But I mean, just hearing the way that he talks about just the transition play just sounds a lot like the way Jon Cooper has been explaining, positional responsibilities in his system, year in, year out in his tenure with the Tampa Bay Lightning. And he does have a point too, because even the best players in hockey can get a lot of assists on missed shots, which seems like a cheap way to give someone an assist, but that's just part of the game. Offense and defense are so intertwined in hockey in a way that you really don't see in any other sport. Maybe basketball, maybe lacrosse, you can argue, have similar connections with defense turning to offense in a blink of an eye. And under Jon Cooper, I think the Lightning do that better than any other team in the league. And he utilizes the skills of his players. You see that they take a more defensive approach when it's McDonough and Chernak's line coming on. The defense are pushed up a little bit more when, Victor Hedman and his line are on, when Darren Radish and his line are on, or even in the 11-7. This was an 11-7 game that the Lightning put up one of their highest goal tallies in a game so far this season. And you can't do that. You can't, play such an offensive-minded game and have that be really the main point of emphasis without having a great coach. And this season, the Lightning, with in some ways a new look roster, losing one of the greatest players to ever wear a Lightning jersey in the offseason, so many negative thoughts, negative things being said about the team and their chances at the beginning of the season. And you can't respond to what was a successful but difficult offseason with as much success as the Lightning have had this season without a great coach at the helm. And that is exactly what Jon Cooper is. I think right now, if you ask me to make a team, Jon Cooper would be my coach. He might not be able to go down as the greatest coach of all time just yet, but another 12 seasons like this, I don't think there's going to be a debate anymore. But there is certainly no debate that right now, Jon Cooper is the best coach in the NHL. So if you guys want to argue with that, make sure to get up in the comments on YouTube or DM us on X at LO_Lightning. But we've got another great debate, not for the all-time great, but as the best in the world right now. Nikita Kucherov getting to 100 points for the third straight season, joining legends such as Paul Coffey and Jaromir Jagr with 5 100-point season in absolutely elite company, and also 3 straight seasons with over 70 assists, a feat that only 9 other players have done in their NHL career. So it begs the question, is Nikita Kucherov the best hockey player on the planet right now? If you're like me, your mornings have to start with a good cup of coffee. But I got tired for settling for grocery store brands that just weren't cutting it. That's why I turned to Trade. And let me tell you, this coffee is next level. Trade is the #1 specialty coffee marketplace in the United States, bringing you fresh coffee from over 50 of the country's top roasters. Trade's experts have taste tested thousands of coffees, curating over 450 amazing roasts. Whether you're new to coffee or know exactly what you like, they'll handpick the perfect match for you. I took their quick quiz, and in under a minute, they matched me with a roast that was fresh, smelled incredible, and tasted even better. My first bag was a game changer. It had such a smooth, rich flavor, and I can actually taste the difference from my usual coffee. Not to mention, I could smell how good it was from a couple of feet outside of the mailroom. The subscription to Trade makes it so easy as well. No more last-minute grocery store runs or settling for whatever is on the shelf every time I run out. And if you don't love your first bag, no worries. Trade will price it for free until they get it just right. So right now, Trade is offering our listeners 40% off of your first order at drinktrade.com/LockedOnNHL. That's drinktrade.com/LockedOnNHL for 40% off of your first order. Drinktrade, TRADE.com/LockedOnNHL. Click on the link below and get 40% off of your first order. So, Tampa Bay Lightning with another all-time great. I think that is something you could certainly argue with Nikita Kucherov, as I just did with Jon Cooper in the last segment. But to preface things and maybe simplify it a little bit, yes, I know Alex Ovechkin is one of, if not the greatest players of all time. I don't want to discount his greatness when I say this next part, because right now I feel like among hockey fans, there's a big three that, different fans will go back and forth between as the best player in the game right now. That's Nathan MacKinnon of the Colorado Avalanche, Connor McDavid of the Edmonton Oilers, and Nikita Kucherov of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Am I a little bit biased about Nikita Kucherov? Maybe. Getting to see him play, every home game is an absolute treat. He's just so smooth with a puck and a true joy to watch. And he's also a joy to play with. While I might not know exactly how great teammates McKinnon and McDavid are. I'm sure they are fantastic teammates. But I do know that Brandon Hagel, among probably everyone else for the Tampa Bay Lightning, can speak on how much they love playing with a player like Nikita Kucherov.
That's one thing about Kuch. He's a 100-point guy, but he wants to be out there and battle with the guys no matter. I mean, losing teeth and if those are sensitive, that definitely isn't fun. I can attest for that. But yeah, that's what just Kuch does, and that's why he's loved by his teammates and he's considered a gamer.
And I think Brandon Hagel said gamer. Took a little pause before that, maybe because he didn't want to make the bold proclamation that Nikita Kucherov is the best player in the world right now. I'll make that proclamation because if I'm picking a hockey team, the first offensive player I'm drafting is Nikita Kucherov. My first pick would be Vasilevsky as my goalie, then probably Kuch. He has just turned into such a well-rounded player, as Jon Cooper said post-game. And the toughness that he has, I think, is one thing that really separates him from most other stars and certainly from McDavid and Nathan McKinnon. Because you look at the last couple of seasons, statistically, there's not much of a difference between these two guys. I mean, these are all three players are on some of the best teams in the league, surrounded by elite offensive talent. And guys that are putting up similar numbers to Nikita Kucherov and being, the driving force behind the success of their teams. In fact, Nathan McKinnon really burst onto the scene against the Tampa Bay Lightning in that Stanley Cup final that we don't really want to talk about. But again, statistically, there's not much of a difference. But I'm not trying to, come at McKinnon or McDavid. They're both fantastic players. They're both guys that I'm sure you can look at each one of them and say that they might have a certain edge over Kucherov. Obviously, it's the faceoffs for Nathan McKinnon. And he might be the only passer in the NHL that can match Kucherov in terms of skill. Connor McDavid is just maybe the fastest skater I've ever seen. And I think that certainly helps. But, the stick handling ability that Kucherov's had is his next level, comparable to those two guys. I think Kuch's is still better, but it's the toughness for me that really sets him apart. And I'm going to use an example from the second period, the Lightning's fifth goal of the game, their only power play marker on the night, which Nikita Kucherov scored. By the way, Kuch leads the NHL in power play points so far this season. And partly because of Kucherov, the Lightning have two of the top power play scorers in the league. Jake Guentzel and Braden Point each have 15 power play tallies this season. But the interference penalty that led to that power play coming on Graves, an interference call on Nikita Kucherov. I mean, he got hit hard. He immediately just beeline to the locker room. I think he lost a tooth. Definitely had some blood on his face there. And before the end of the power play, not only was he back, I think he was in the locker room for a minute or less before he came back out onto the ice. And he ended up scoring that power play goal with 9 seconds on the power play, not too long after he entered the game. And that just right there not only shows how Nikita Kucherov's presence changes the game. Again, something that you can also argue about McKinnon, McDavid, and other of the top guys in the league. But what you don't see from them is that kind of toughness that Kucherov has. Not as much in hockey, but in a lot of other sports, you complain about some of the top players whining about not getting calls simply because they're superstar calls. You're not going to get that from Kucherov. He's just going to shake off any bad hit, any dirty play, and come back on the ice and just dominate you. And you don't see a lot of players like that that you can just tell that they just hate getting off the ice. And that's part of what makes him a superstar. His toughness, his grit. He just always wants to be out there on the ice. And even if you look at assists as a separator with those guys, is Nathan McKinnon currently leading the league with 77 assists, though Kucherov not too far off the pace. And Connor McDavid is hoping to get back in a game this season so he can get his 4th consecutive season with 70 or more assists, a feat that very few players have done before. But I think especially with Connor McDavid, a lot of those assists come off of their missed shots. And that's certainly the case sometime for Kucherov. That's a part of the game. That's a part of, just NHL hockey. But even a guy who shoots as much as Kucherov, and by the way, Nathan MacKinnon, 2nd most shots attempted in the entire NHL this season. Kucherov is a bit further down on that list. But you look at the assists that he makes, and they're just inch-perfect passes from who knows where on the ice to how the heck did that guy get his stick on the puck. I mean, those are the kind of plays, passing-wise, that we see from Nikita Kucherov on an everyday basis. And to me, his stick handling is elite. His passing is elite and maybe unmatched. His toughness for a guy with a pedigree of Nikita Kucherov also is pretty incredible. And to me, I think you combine all those things plus a great ability to score as well. I just don't think there's an offensive player. I really don't think there's any skater in the NHL that I'd rather have on my team than Nikita Kucherov. And he is continuing to prove that he is one of the NHL's best, and in my opinion, the NHL's best right now. And that is going to do it for today's show. We'll have more to talk about tomorrow, but until then, I'm Josh Sperber, thanking all of you for making Locked On Lightning your first listen every day. And now for your second listen, make sure to check out the Locked On NHL podcast. The Locked On NHL brings you the daily league-wide stories that matter with the local coverage that you love from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And for wherever you listen to today's podcast, please give us a like, a follow, subscribe. We really do appreciate your guys' support because we do this show for you guys, the fans. So thank you again for tuning in, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. Until then, have a great day and go Bolts.